Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Good morning, everybody. Mike Anderson here, joining late with Dave Whalen. We appreciate you all making your time available here today. We are going to spend the next half hour or so talking about why long-term care matters, what kind of a difference it can make for your practice, and why it'll make a difference for your clients. As is always the case, we will be in lecture mode, or everybody will be muted, and that's so that we can get a quality recording that we can store in our training archives. That'll be available later this afternoon for you. You can circle back around to it as you see fit. I know Dave put some things into the toolbar that you can download. Feel free to grab those at any point in time, pull them over onto your desktop, and I think you'll find that they'll be very helpful as you're doing things. So I want to stop or start, I guess, by telling you a little bit, kind of setting the stage for things. I was on a business trip a few weeks ago. I had just plopped myself down into an airline seat, and the guy that was going to be my seatmate very shortly thereafter plopped himself down. He looked kind of frayed and harried, I would say. And over the next few minutes, while he'd gotten his gear stowed and everything, we exchanged a little bit of small talk. And I happened to catch a look at his business card, and this guy was an agent for a big life insurance company. And needless to say, it didn't take me very long, and I had my Dr. Dre headphones on, and I was deep into the middle of a book that I was reading. And I'm sharing that to start us off, in a little while down the path here, you're going to understand why I did that. What we're going to do over the next few minutes is talk about why long-term care matters, this subject here, and how it ties into the American dream. So think for a second. What is the American dream? All right. If I asked a large group of folks in a meeting room what it was, I would probably get just about as many answers as we had folks in the room or folks on the call. A guy named John Truslow Adams actually coined this phrase many years ago. And I want you to think for a second about this. Do you think when he coined that phrase, what he was thinking about is people that are working hard every day and saving like crazy for 40 years and then having that all blow up because they didn't do any planning and it got destroyed? I think the truth is, regardless of your positioning on this, the reality for folks is that the American dream is it's setting up a plan that allows for a comfortable, event-filled retirement, doing things that matter to that particular individual. But the problem is only 10% of the workforce out there has taken steps to protect this. 10%. That means 90% of 130 roughly million working Americans live every day with the American dream in peril. So, by show of hands, and this is a little bit rhetorical, how many of you out there would consider yourselves to be long-term care specialists? How many of you do P&C at all or are in the CPA business? Got anybody that's a financial advisor? When we do these kinds of things, we typically get hands that go up on all of those, and in some cases, some combination of those. The point I'm making is that when I talk to agents, it's a diverse group of people. The nature of the brokerage business we're in is that we don't all do the same things. And our customers probably have, similarly different profiles, if you will, but I believe that you're all here to learn something, something that we put out there piqued your interest, and you're here to learn more, and that's good. And so what I'm going to do over the next few minutes is try to talk to all of you. What you perceive to be a problem is probably going to be different depending on which one of those different categories we talked about before you fit into. And so with that in mind, I'm going to go forth. And if you find that I'm talking about something you already know, it's probably because I'm aiming for a different part of our group. But sooner or later, I'm going to circle back to all of us together. Along the way, you're probably going to hear me be a little bit of a drill sergeant, a little bit of a ball coach, a little bit of a teacher, and maybe something of a spiritual advisor. So back to our rhetorical questions. How many of you have sold long-term care in the last year? How many of you have sold long-term care in the last month? maybe more importantly, how many of you used to sell long-term care actively and you've gravitated away to other markets? All right. We've probably got some people who are in the long-term care market, got people who used to be in it, and people maybe that want to be in it and see the opportunity. Regardless of which of those groups you're in, you came here today for a reason. And if you're coming back, we're welcoming you back, and we're glad that you're here. We're going to show you some new things here today that we believe if you employ them in your practice, they will help you. All right. So now, to kind of set us up for where we're at now. For those who are in long-term care and those who left, I'm not going to spend a lot of time and hash over negativity. At the same time, I'm not going to tell you everything's cool and that we've solved all the problems. The truth be told, we've solved most of them, and we're really down to one. We've got some ideas for you on that particular one, and we'll look at that a little bit more later. But to be successful in this broad market, you're going to have to set aside some old prejudices and some old I don't like. So you're going to have to set those things aside and reset your approach. If you do, it's going to work for you. We've been working with agents for about 40 years, and the market contracted a lot in the last 2 years. It shrunk from a standpoint of carriers. Once upon a time, we had huge numbers of agents that we were able to talk to, and we had dozens of carriers that we could choose from. All right. Now that's not the case. But when you talk to people about it and you say that, a lot of them get defensive. Okay. It's kind of a situation where these things are happening. You're sitting on the island and the tide's coming in and the island is shrinking. But when I point out the tide's coming in, you get all defensive, tell me that's not what's happening, and insist that everything's going to be okay. All of that said, the truth is there's some advantages to where we're at now. There's fewer carriers to be aware of, fewer carrier products that you have to master. That's okay. Within that space, we still have a really good, solid, diverse product set. And the rates right now look to be about as stable as they've been. Now, we're going to stipulate here, we'll stipulate it again later. No single solution is the absolute right solution for everybody. So, we're asking you not to get defensive. What we're wanting to do is show you a way to be more comfortable and effective in working with a new and different client set than we've ever had. And contrary to what you might have heard or what you might have said, the market's huge. I talked about it before. 90% of 130 million working Americans. That's a gigantic need that never, ever went away. So there's a purpose to what we're doing, and that's been the case with AIM for 40 years. We never went away. There is no greater proponent of long-term care than American Independent Marketing. That is our DNA. It's what we have done for a long time. There's a new type of conversation that you're probably going to have to get comfortable with and embrace, because there's a new type of prospect out there that you're going to have to work with. And to help protect the American dream, you're going to need to do this, because if you don't do it, people are going to be hurt. Okay. We're going to put you in a position to be able to work smarter and improve the odds. Okay. That said, are we going to get 70-year-olds approved? No, not going to happen. But you can keep trying if you want to, like the old dogs do. Or maybe it's time to shift. Maybe it's time to start having conversations with young, healthy, but financially appropriate 50-year-olds and 55-year-olds. The people who are running at you with their hair on fire, begging for help, may not be your best prospects, because the ability to help them is going to be significantly mitigated once you find out the reason that their hair is on fire and they are running towards you screaming. The decision as to which direction you go is up to you, but I think it's going to be pretty obvious if you do this that you're going to improve your issue rate if you're willing to adapt. If you come back to long-term care with an open mind and you try some of the different ways we're going to talk to you about, you're going to win. Your clients are going to win. Okay. Those clients are going to, on average, spend about $2,600 each. All right. And being honest, they're going to get less coverage than they did before. But if you work smarter not only are you going to thrive, but you're going to succeed within those parameters. Now, I mentioned before that if you don't adapt and make these changes, people that you know are going to get hurt. And I know this because I don't typically have sales conversations. I'm licensed, but I wholesale. And because of that, a close friend of mine, a gentleman that I've known for 40 years, about 16 months ago, he had a stroke at the age of 63, and it financially devastated he and his wife. Okay. Now, like I said, I don't sell, but one of the things that happened as a result of this, he had to medically retire, crack open his 401k for care, et cetera. All of the things that you hear told about what happens consequentially when you aren't prepared for this kind of thing. So now one of the upsides, if you will, is I get to spend a lot more time with this guy than I used to before because he doesn't work. But every time he and I are together, you can almost sense this, why didn't we have this conversation? He wonders why I didn't talk to him about it. I wonder why I didn't talk to him about it. And I can't fix that. But there's things that together we can fix, and that's what we're going to talk about. The stark, hard truth of this conversation is that the devastating cost of long-term care is the single biggest threat to retirement planning in middle America. So now you're probably wondering why I've got this foreclosure slide up here, and it's about why long-term care matters more than anything else. And the reason that I mention this is because people are buying homes later in life. They're selling the family home that they raised the kids in, and they're taking out a mortgage on a $275,000 new place that's the proverbial dream home, etc. But guess what is a casualty if they run into a long-term care situation and they aren't prepared? That's right. This right here. My buddy that I told you about, he had to crack open his 401k and all of his retirement things, and he actually had a little bit of a inheritance. All of that had to be used to pay off his house so that they didn't have consistent ongoing debt. All right. So this is a significant part of this. Okay. So now you're going to see some numbers here. We talked about the number of people in the workplace who don't have any steps in place, any blockades in place to protect the American dream. All right. Well, when you take those people and the average balance of a 401k or retirement plan, that's where you end up with about $7 trillion that is at risk. That's right. $7 trillion is out there, and it is exposed to long-term care. Okay. That's based on the $96,000 average balance, not median, but average balance in a 401k plan. And that's using roughly 101 million Americans who are in the workforce out there that have not taken some steps to protect this particular piece. So now, not very often that I have conversations with agents that don't at some point in time include sort of a plea on their part, geez, I wish I had more people to talk to. Well, trust me, you can take all you want out of that chunk of 101 million people, and there's still going to be plenty for everybody else, and there's going to be plenty more for you. Okay, that's a stack of leads that'll keep you busy for as long as you want to be busy. Say what you want about the market and about the difficulties with long-term care. That's a lot of people to talk about. All right, the market stalled. Okay, it stalled for a lot of different reasons, but there was still some market there. Those folks still needed help. I suspect a lot of it had to do with a little bit of the industry letting America down, the carriers and the agents. This is a financial conversation, but it's a difficult one to have. All right, the industry turned away because it got tough. The going got tough, and we got going. All right. The simple truth is Americans are used to complex, detailed conversations. All right. The new type of prospect that I'm telling you about is out there, and it doesn't cost you money to have a conversation with them. All right. You can do it. There's plenty of people to talk to. When you do it, you boil it down a little bit more. The 90-10 rule kind of applies. And what that means is that when we finish this today, some of you are going to go forth and make an impact on the problem. Some of you are serial webinar attendees. You're not going to do anything. The decision is yours. We'd prefer that you step out of your comfort zone and get moving, but that's up to you. All right. It's not going to be easy, but there is an opportunity and you can be successful with it. You've shown the skill set and you've shown the willingness to, to kind of dig in. All right. So before I talked about diving into the headset and sitting next to the New York Life agent, and I mentioned that because don't you suppose that some of the people that you talk to maybe feel that way when you tell them you want to have a conversation? All right. So as you ease into that introductory conversation, tell these people that you specialize in risk management. That's what you do. And that as you work with people, you become really concerned at how many of the people out there are totally unaware that retirement thing that we talked about before, the $7 trillion, they're totally aware of how much exposure that faces. And that in reality, long-term care is the biggest unsecured risk that anybody in the country is going to face, knowingly or otherwise. Okay. All you want to do is sit down and make sure they understand it. Make sure they're aware of the fact that there's a pennies on the dollar solution, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. Based on what we know today, a married couple in their 40s or 50s is probably looking at about $500,000 of exposure. And if you'll remember, I mentioned that the average 401k balance was $96,000. You don't need a calculator to do that math. That exposure is enough to wipe out that average 401k balance 4 times over. So this is a big deal. This is a tsunami that is coming right at these folks. But we as an industry have the ability to do something for them. But you got to start by having a conversation. And I think it's best to start by having that conversation with the people that are closest to you. Because if you don't and something goes wrong, you're going to be having that looking at each other across the room kind of thing. The good part with this is there's some new solutions to the problem. We're going to look at that a little bit here in a second. The agent pool is diverse. The solution set has become more diverse. If you've ever sold long-term care, you probably had people that didn't transact even though they really seemed like they were leaning in. There's probably some things that they didn't tell you. And what's happened is we have learned along the way why. There was a survey done in 2015. All right. And that survey, what it told us, and they interviewed both buyers and non-buyers of long-term care. All right. What it told us, or what we found out as an industry, is 86% of the people that didn't buy said they were going to be more likely to engage to buy if they felt like something that was going to be a considerable investment, if it was going to be guaranteed that their premiums wouldn't increase. At the same time, 67% of those non-buyers said they'd be more willing to engage if they could be absolutely certain they were going to get something for, again, that significant investment. Okay, they didn't want a use it or lose it product. And as you'll see in a little bit, we've got something that very specifically addresses these two issues. All right, but to make sure we know how to address them, you've got to be listening for the verbal cues. All right, so how do you do that? Well, one of the things that I recommend that you do, and we talked about this a minute ago, you go get a brand new crisp $1 bill from the bank right off the stack. You could cut some cheese with this thing, cut a slice of steak, I guess, or whatever. Anyway, get that and then a penny. And when you sit down to have this conversation, you put the penny in front of your left arm, you put the dollar in front of your right arm, and you leave that sit. Okay, and then you sit down and you kind of go through your intro thing again, risk management, the different things that you do, et cetera. Problem that you found most folks don't know that they've got to deal with. And then you ask them. This is how you set up to get your answers. You ask about who they have their car insurance with, what year the cars are, did they buy them new? Talk to them about that, the kind of coverages that they've got. Ask them about their health insurance. That's a hot button topic right now, as everybody knows. How much of that coverage would be available for them if they had to have a serious surgery, heart surgery, et cetera? You're probably sitting in their home. Ask them about that house. It's a nice house. When did they buy it? How much has that value of that house increased? Think about these things. You don't typically have those kinds of conversations. You can make a comment about how much of a pain in the butt homeowners insurance is because you have to calculate replacement cost. But the truth is, even though it's a pain in the butt, it protects what they think is their biggest asset, that house. Okay, well, truth is, that's not really their biggest asset. They just don't get it. By the time they retire, this plan they've been working with for 10, 15, 20 years is going to be worth more than that house in all likelihood, unless you live in Seattle. And they're probably going to go, yeah, and they're going to nod their head. And so you ask them, all this planning and such that you're doing, who's insuring that? Who's protecting that plan? Okay. Do you understand, Bob and Carol Davis, those are always our clients, do you understand that the rules of the game is such that that retirement plan is also your 401k plan unless you've taken steps? We don't make the rules of the game up, but those are, in fact, the rules of the game. Move along here. We'll talk about A667. All right, so you're doing all this to sort of gauge their awareness and their risk, whether they're risk averse or risk tolerant. And it comes down to this. All right, you're back to your props. The nice part of risk management, which is what you do, is a solution that you can put together for most folks. And that solution costs them about a penny on the dollar. You've got access to multiple companies that warehouse risk. You can negotiate a transfer on their behalf for one, in a worst case scenario, maybe 2 pennies on the dollar. All right. And when you finish the conversation, they're going to have a choice. And that choice is, do they want to work with you to transfer this risk to a company that does that specialization that you talked about? Or do they want to keep that and be certain that they're going to pay $1 on the dollar, 100 cents on the dollar? So they can pay a little or they can pay a lot. But the rules of the game are, if they decide not to pay a little, they're guaranteed to pay a lot, period. All right. And remember, along the way, if they decide to go this way, it doesn't quite work out that way because they're going to lose about that much of that dollar to taxes and prepay penalties and things like that if they have to go that way. So they're actually going to need to take about $140 out or $140,000 out to get $100,000 to pay for care. A $300,000 pile of money is really only going to pay for about $200,000 worth of care. So when you were having the conversation with them before, what kind of signals did you pick up about this? All right. Did they mention Uncle Louie and his Unum policy and the fact that he had some rate increases? Did they talk about somebody that they knew who had a policy but died in a car accident and never got to use it? That's the kind of information that sets the stage to talk to them about a newer, simpler way to address this and to deal with these things, okay? And you may need to be more direct and ask them just flat out whether anybody in the family's ever needed care, how they got that care handled, and do they know anybody that currently owns a long-term care policy. So you ask, you're thinking to yourself, all right, why does all this stuff matter? Remember that survey that I mentioned to you before? They may be telling you that a traditional solution isn't going to work for them. All right. They may be saying, I don't like use it or lose it, or I don't like rate increases. For some of you, the new solution that we're going to look at could end up being a better solution. It's guaranteed. Everything's guaranteed. Your premiums, your benefits, the whole 9 yards. That's what hybrids do. They address the reasons that consumers haven't purchased previously. And we have a new hybrid that, unlike most of them, it doesn't require your clients to spend $150,000 to put the program in place. Okay? So you're probably asking yourself why we need a new solution. Well, remember, at the beginning, I talked about the fact that people aren't buying and that this one solution doesn't work for everybody. No one solution is the right solution for everybody. And I'm going to throw a disclaimer in that there's options in the space that we're going to move into here, this hybrid space. There's a lot of options out there. We feel like, given what we know about you agents and what you do, this is a really, really good option. So let's problem solve a little bit. The beauty of this thing, CareShield. You've probably heard us talk about it before. You've seen mailers and stuff that we've done on it. You've probably heard on-hold messaging about it. The beauty of this thing is if you can't draw it up on a cocktail napkin, you've overcomplicated it. It literally is that simple. Everything's guaranteed. The clients are going to know exactly what they're paying every day going forward, and they're going to know exactly what they're getting every day going forward. Nothing's ever going to change. Why do we think it's a better option? Well, first of all, it's always going to pay. We'll look at that more here in a second. And second of all, everything is guaranteed. All right. It's going to pay if they need chronic care, monthly benefit of between $2,000 and $10,000 a month for a 25-month period of time. It's going to pay if they pass away, live too soon, die too late. All right. But either way, they're going to get paid. And it also will pay for terminal illness as well. It's got a built-in ROP option. At 25 years, your clients can get all their money back. We truly don't think that people are going to use this very much, but we think it's a great pacifier when you're having that sales conversation. And most importantly, premium rates are guaranteed for life. If you haven't had a conversation with somebody about this product and you've known about it, I'd ask you to really look in the mirror and ask yourself why. What we know from talking to agents about it is if you put it out there, it's going to resonate with the clients. They are going to respond to it. They're going to come at it, so to speak. It's not the perfect long-term care solution, but for many of the clients that you would have conversations with, it's going to be about as close as you can get. A couple of quick pricing comparisons here. Oops, let me go back here. This is with a female age 57. A male age 57. These are the CareShield prices. For the female age 57, you're looking at a long-term care premium of about $2,700. Okay. So now, ups and downs. The thing we know about traditional long-term care, prices will increase at some point in time or other. Don't know when, don't know by how much, and that we don't know if it's going to happen more than once. All right. That's something that these new buyers have told us they're concerned about. The old buyers told us they were concerned about it, and it's why they didn't do anything. All right. Traditional long-term care is a use it or lose it proposition. Same thing. Buyers have told us that's a problem. Well, the problem has been taken off the table. And on top of that, traditional long-term care doesn't have a money-back option. That's the use it or lose it possibility that you face. So that's a new solution. We've got plenty of old solutions. We've been in the solutions business for a long time, and we think that if you get more into the solutions business, it's going to expand your practice. It's going to expand your ability to help more people. So I know that's the last slide in the presentation. So Dave and I are going to take a second here, and we are going to open up the lines, so to speak. As we always say, if you aren't going to ask any questions, or if you're on a speakerphone or on a cell phone, if you wouldn't mind muting it, we'd appreciate that, because otherwise we get background noise. It sounds like you're talking to NASA. So let's go ahead and open it up for questions.
Hi, Mike. Michelle posed a question partway through, and I was not giving it my undivided attention as to where you were in the presentation, but she made a comment. What about when you do work in the Seattle market? Michelle, maybe you can make a clarification on why you brought that up.
Yes, it was having to do with the housing market and you know, where it was most important and where the cost was, and you know, where it made sense everywhere else except for the Seattle market.
Well, the thing to remember of the Seattle market is obviously something of an anomaly. It's a good question, but it is a bit of an anomaly. All right. In the meantime, what you've got there is a situation where, you know, the housing values are going through the roof, but that 401k is still unprotected. That's the liquidity that most folks are going to tap in the event that something goes wrong. That's why we talk about protecting the American dream. You know, when you're having a call like this with agents from 26 states, you're going to run into things that are a little bit atypical of what goes on in the bigger picture out there. So that's kind of what we wrestle with there. But the thing to remember is regardless of whether your clients are in a $150,000 house or a $500,000 house, most of the time there's a mortgage, which means that they don't have a big line of credit that they can go jump onto. If they've got a need for care, the long-term care, or not the long-term care, I'm sorry, the 401k plan, 403b, whatever the hell it is, that's what they're going to crack to pay for that. All right, any other questions out there? Okay. Again, handouts over here on the bottom right-hand side. Some things you can pull down and make use of. Grab one, pull it over. If you're not licensed with Mutual of Omaha, if you're not appointed with Minnesota Life and Securian, to get access to the CareShield product, I'd recommend that you email Dave or myself when we finish up here. We can get that paperwork over to you and get you started. So, all right, one more time for any questions before we go ahead and wrap this up. Okay, well, then we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Again, we'll process the recorded version. We'll get it posted on our website, and it'll be available as an archived resource for you. We do appreciate y'all making your time available to help us or to join us this week. We hope this was helpful for you. And with